A blessed good night to one and all. My name is Ramon Goodman. We're here on DLP TV on another episode of Meet the Candidates. I am here with Mr. Pedro Shepherd, General Secretary of the Democratic Labour Party, and also, well, I'm going to speak it into being, the next representative of St. Michael Southeast. Good night to you.
Good night, sir.
Mr. Pedro Shepherd. Good night to you. Yes. So that episode, we're going to have a conversation here tonight, right? No. All right. So I've got a question for you. Outside of politics, what are some personal interests or hobbies that you enjoy?
Outside of politics, I really have very few hobbies. In politics is what I enjoy. Other than my job, which is, as you know, teaching. I love children, so I would say that outside of politics, the next thing would be teaching and children. I do a little part-time farming, some chickens, work land sometimes, but the things I really enjoy, I can't afford. Traveling. I love to travel, but I can't afford. I also love to drive around Barbados. I can't afford. Gas too expensive. Roads terrible. But I'm just a simple, humble Barbadian.
Understood. So how do you maintain a work-life balance and ensure you stay grounded?
Well, I'm from a large family in St. Philip. My mother had 11 of us. We came up poor, but no one never knew that we were poor because we didn't show poor. We were always told by our grandparents not to show poor. So I came up in a large family. I had to help my mother, or my brothers and sisters would help my mother work on the plantation in order for her to be able to make ends meet to send us to school. I remember the days of walking to St. Mark's from Vineyard without shoes. I was actually trying to remember at one point if I went to school from the school with shoes.
Yes.
I know my cousins from Bayfield had shoes because their parents, the father was a fisherman and the mother selling fish. So they made money.
Well,
and they were able to get, at that time it was dog muscle. I think I had to slam that, basically, in my younger days. I always wanted to assist people as a result of that. I always wanted to assist people, and from as far back as probably 1975, I can see now the posters on the poles as I traverse St. Philip. We'd be like going to parish land to buy groceries for my mother and so on. We used to call them goods at the time. We used to go for goods. Nowadays we call them groceries, fancy name. But I can remember seeing the posters of Mark Franklin and David Simmons from as far back as 1975, 76. And I always had a passion for politics from then. I left St. Mark's Primary and I went on to Corridor Parry. And those who went to Corridor Parry with me would tell you that I would have been found two places. Either in the library, reading the Hansards, or over by the headmaster's house, tending to the sheep. So that's me.
Any sports?
None whatsoever. All right. I played a leprechaun in the village during the summer vacation, but nothing serious. All my brothers, though, are cricketers. So if you hear about Shepherd and cricket, those are my brothers.
They were good?
Very good.
Very good.
Very good. Some still play.
Okay. Well, you told us a little bit about your background. What really motivated you to enter politics?
I think coming up, as I said, poor, making it to secondary school, traversing the entire country, going from St. Philip to St. Peter, not getting involved in cadets in sports, but just simply reading the Hansards and following the parliamentary debates and so on. My mentors then, or people who I looked up to then, would have been Blake Branford, Tate, Warren Franklin, David Simmons, Billy Miller, Henry Ford, that crop of politicians, and I enjoyed the debates. I was also part of the Fourth Movement from very young. That encouraged me to be able to speak in a public forum. I always made my way through these organizations. So from 4-H as a member, I went up to being a director of the Barbados 4-H Foundation. I then came into teaching, and I came into teaching through Warren Franklin. And ended up being the president of the Barbados Union of Teachers for a number of years. So I think I always had the capacity to move my way up the ladder through hard work, of course. So that's basically, I guess,
Through hard work and slamming tar.
slamming tar.
Yes, yes.
I still slam some tar. I love to walk around barefoot.
Yes, you love the yes, yes, I love it as well. I mean, sometimes the ground is extremely hot, so I don't know how you actually do that, but you know.
Well, you get accustomed to it. I remember I had some cousins in from England in the probably early 80s, and we would always journey to tree houses spring.
Yeah.
We barefoot, and they want to be barefoot as well, but you know, they're coming from England, the feet soft, and the scotch on the side of the road and that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Okay, so key experiences or challenges in your life that have obviously shaped who you are today. Key experiences.
But I think key experiences that shaped me would have been, I believe, being honest, working hard, wanting to succeed, to see people succeed. And I think that's one of the reasons why I want to get involved in politics too, because sometimes you see people in certain conditions and you believe that you can help. You don't have the resources to help, but you want to help. And I think that is one of the reasons why I challenge my life in this particular direction. I am not one with a lot of experiences. People that tell you about their life and all the experiences. I have had very few. I am a very, people would say probably a shy person, a very quiet person. I spend most of my time with myself because I enjoy spending time with myself.
So when you speak, you make it matter.
I try to.
Good. So how has your professional journey, you said you were a teacher, how has your professional journey prepared you for a role in politics?
Well, as I said, I began teaching in 1987, and by 1996, I was a member of the Barbados Teachers Executive. And the story behind that is a rather interesting one. I remembered the president then, Jeff Brooms, going to the ministry to discuss the reopening of Eardiston Teachers Training College because it was closed at the time. And during the meeting at the union, he made some comment about the ministry not ready to resume Eardiston or something like that. And he said to him, but if you're representing teachers and teachers want to be trained, then you need to go back to the ministry and ensure that Eardiston is reopened. And being very vocal at that meeting, by the time I got to St. Margaret's in 1987, after being transferred for being fairly vocal as well, I was then made an executive member. And from then, I just continued to do what I had to do, represent the interests of people. I became a vice president of the Barbados Union of Teachers in 2003, when Undine Whitaker moved into politics and Kevin Best moved up to president. And from then, it was easy sailing. But I enjoyed my time at the Barbados Union of Teachers. I think that is one of the regrets I have. Having to, well, not having to, but the decision I took in 2022, when I entered politics, I took the decision to resign as president because I didn't want a conflict of interest. But I think I regret it to some extent because I've seen a decline in the type of representation that the union became accustomed to. Of course, there are some that would say I did not represent them well. But I think my achievements at the Barbados Union of Teachers speak for itself.
Lots of passion, lots of sacrifices for that passion.
Yes.
And so what skills and insights from your previous jobs do you think will be beneficial in serving your constituents?
Previous jobs?
That's correct.
I started at 19 to be a teacher, so one might say that was my only job, but I would say no. When I left for Jampari in 1986, my first job was actually cutting canes. Yes, I cut canes for an entire crop season. I can't remember why I visited Warwick Franklin, the then member of parliament, but he asked me then if I never thought about teaching. Of course, I never did. I mean, coming from a poor background, you know, we never thought of being a teacher, we never thought of being a president of a teachers union. But I told him I never gave it any thought. He said, "Welcome to my office on Monday." I did that. He gave me a letter. Honest as I was, I did not read it.
Yeah.
I didn't hear back anything. I haven't taken it to the ministry. I didn't hear anything in about 2 or 3 days. So when we met up again, I told him I didn't hear anything. He asked me to come back. I went back to him. He said, "Well, look, take this here. You go down to Corridor Park. Speak to Mr. Ali, the deputy." At that time, that was his official name, formal name, but we would call him Go Ali. So he told me to go to Go Ali because they were friends and so. We went to Mr. Ali and I got the testimonial. I took it back to him at the Ministry of Agriculture. And he gave me a letter to carry to the ministry. And the next day was called by an officer from the ministry to turn up at 4 o'clock. I think it was 4:30. And I said, government department, 4:30, that sounds like closing time. So I was there from about 3:30. I waited about an hour, and then this lady, Miss Husbands, came in. She asked me my name. I said, Pedro Shepherd, here waiting to see you. And so she said, "But we are out in the field." I said, "But 4:30 sounded to me like closing time," so I decided to come a bit. And I had a choice of about 3 schools. I chose St. Bartholomew, so that we started in 1987. And by September, I was transferred to the Batch Primary. But basically, I had 2 jobs in life. One connecting and one teaching.
Okay. So what are your core values that guide you both personally and professionally?
I believe I can say honesty, hard work, being trustworthy, being dedicated to task, and being responsible. If I am given a task, I will do what I have to do. At my school, people might smile because they say that I do the task, but in my time. I cannot do it in my time.
Yeah.
I can't do it in anybody else's time. So if I'm given a task, expect me to do it in my time. So don't rush me, in other words.
Taking your time is not laziness, huh?
Not laziness.
Yes.
It will be done.
Yes.
After yesterday, I had some tests. People sent tests and so on for me to copy and prepare and whatever. And by the time they came in the evening, they were there.
Beautiful.
And they said, "Shepherd on target."
Yes. Okay, what is your vision for your constituency and how do you plan to achieve it?
Well, my vision for St. Michael Southeast, first of all, is to have me as their member of parliament when the elections are called.
Speaking of being, yes.
Once they make me the member of parliament, I am intending to create a new St. Michael Southeast. I want to uplift the constituency. I want to be able to take the schools in the constituency, where possible, join them in terms of having, let's take Ricky Cumberbatch and Hill and Urban Wilson, for example, schools that you can, put your hand up to the window and touch the other one. So my intention is to make that campus, have those 3 sets of students interact with each other, the staff interact with each other, sharing facilities in terms of land use, photocopying stuff, even security-wise, we can look at merging those. And certainly the only secondary school in the constituency, which is Parkinson Memorial, that school will no longer close at 3 for education. I believe that we should have schools in Barbados doing adult education, not scattered across the country, but every secondary school should have a portfolio where after 3 you can bring people in, adults in, to do different things. It makes little sense. Right. Speaking about people not being able to read and people not having skills, but you have all the facilities, they're closing at 3. So it's my intention really, when I become the member of parliament for St. Michael Southeast, to ensure that the schools and the community centers are utilized in the constituency. And the members of St. Michael Southeast are given the opportunity to continue to upgrade themselves and to be able to feed themselves, to be able to harness some skills and so on, to be able to become their own entrepreneurs, maybe set up a business or 2 in the community and so on. I really have a vision for the constituency that I'm hoping that once I share it, it is not stolen.
That's right. That's beautiful. Okay, what are the popular areas in your constituency?
All areas of my constituency, I would say, are popular. Some might be popular for things that people might not necessarily appreciate. But if I look at the wealthy area, we have a business community in that area. If we look at the Commonwealth area, we have, again, some businesses, KFC, Chanel's is on the other side, Supermarket on the other side, St. Michael South Central. The schools are more down to the Princess Royal, LaSalle Terrace End. Well, Parkinson is more or less mid-constituency that is just below CBC. But my constituency, will go up as far as St. David's. Right. So, but the area of concentration obviously would quite well be, of course, because maybe about 85% of the constituency resides in that area. And the focus has to be making that part of the constituency like the rest of the constituency. People say that God can't come out of the point, and I always oppose that, because only maybe a month ago there was this news item coming off Trinidad and Tobago where a Barbadian is now the head of the Doctors Association in Trinidad and Tobago, and that's one of my students from the point. If I go into the Queen Elizabeth Hospital, I find a number of doctors who also come from the point. Also produce sportsmen, sportswomen. We've had persons who get 100% in the combinations from the point coming from the combat primary. We just lost a very good person in Jackie Marshall Clark, student of the combat primary. So the point, the wealthy area, is not to be seen as an area that cannot contribute, in other words, to the country. I believe that we have made our contribution to the country, and we will continue to make our contribution. There might be one or two incidences that we would have to deal with in terms of the crime, the shooting, and so on, but we know that those are social problems, and we just have to find ways and means of dealing with those social problems. And I am going to allow the residents of the constituency, but particularly Pineville, to have a forum on the 23rd of February, which is Sunday coming, to come to Parkinson Secondary School, where they can discuss crime in the area. Because we need to find solutions to the crime. It might not necessarily be people who live in the point committing the crimes, but they might be victims of crime. And we want to be able to discuss it. So I'm using this opportunity to ask all of the residents in the Pineville area in particular, Gordon Rock, Parkinson Field, LaSalle Terrace, Princess Royal Avenue, to come up to Parkinson School on Sunday, 4:30, and let us have a discussion as to how we can improve the situation in the point. The members of the Royal Barbados, the police service, Barbados Police Service, they also have a post in the constituency, and I'm hoping that we too can involve them in this exercise.
Well, I just want to track back a little bit, and I want to say a big congrats to the student in which you taught that would have gone on, and he would have been, he's actually a doctor now. Yeah. That's correct?
Well, a girl, a female.
Okay.
In Trinidad, but yes, we have a lot of male doctors.
Okay.
Both male and female.
Beautiful.
We'll keep the school of excellence.
Yes. It must bless your heart. Okay. Yes, for sure. Okay. What do you think are the most pressing issues facing your constituency, and how do you plan to address these issues?
As I canvass the constituency of St. Michael's Southeast, to be honest with you, I approach people in Southeast and I ask them, what are the issues, what are the problems? And honestly, they will tell that they have no issues, no problems. But as you probe, then they will tell you maybe housing. For example, there were those who lived on the estates. The point is, the oldest estate. And they were living there all their life. And in, I think, 2008, they were offered to own their homes through the 20-year program. The Barbados Party government then came in and they stopped that. So that is a source of concern for most of the constituents, owning their own homes. But there are some inherent problems with some of them getting ownership, because you have an entire block maybe of 8 units with one well, and you don't really have the space to give people individual wells and so on. Some of the units are in a fairly precarious state. I don't want to say dilapidated, but the Prime Minister, I think, made a comment sometime that, as she looked across to the point, she was not happy with what she was seeing. So I'm saying that we need to look at sprucing up some of the homes in the Pine and building, but Pine in particular, repainting some and so on. But the issue would be housing. People want to own their own homes. I know there is a plan afoot to move some of them to Lower Burney. That is taking quite some time. They would have moved some to Lower Burney, but the lower part of Lower Burney, those residents are having issues in terms of foundation, how they built on water and so on. They won't tell you who the contractor was. That is another issue. But so housing would be one of the major issues. As close as we are to the Sanitation Services Authority, garbage collection is also an issue as I canvass. I hear people speaking of poor garbage collection. I know prior to around the 2022 general election, we made representation to have sort of a community bin in Golden Rock. And I'm hoping that we can expand that to have some more areas in the Pine where people can at least put the garbage in a nice area. It is built of blocks. It is painted. It has plants around it. So if you pass, you will know that it's a garbage bin. So I must commend Alf Padmore and the Sanitation Services Authority for that project. But we need it further down. Princess Royal as well. Very often we have people in Princess Royal, challenged in terms of finding places to dispose of, and mainly bulk waste, right? So bulk waste and garbage collection, housing, those are basically the issues. You get the occasional resident in the constituency speaking about people speeding through the areas and the need for speed bumps and so on. But as you put down speed bumps, then you have people saying that speed bumps are keeping them back and that kind of stuff. In terms of traffic. So, but I think we need to look at the housing and we need to look at the garbage disposal in the constituency. Those are the major things. Something that I believe I would have to look at as well is the whole issue of welfare. I think we have a lot of elderly people in the constituency who are struggling to pay their utility bills. And we have to find a way as politicians and representatives of the people to assist people in being able to pay their bills and be able to live by food.
Of course. So how do you intend to engage with your constituents to ensure their voices are heard?
Well, I currently do my walkthroughs. I canvass the constituency. I intend to provide opportunities for constituents to be able to meet me, to be able to communicate via WhatsApp, via emails. I am hoping in the not too distant future to be able to establish again an office in the constituency where persons can come and meet with me. It is going to be a challenge, but I believe that it is a necessity. And so I am going to, I'd actually approach the person that I got the office from in the 22 election, but that is not available now. So I'm searching for someplace in the constituency because I need to meet with constituents. As I canvass, people are telling me that they're not seeing the representatives and that all politicians are the same. And I vowed in 2022 not to be like the politicians before me. And so I am going to be visible, I'm going to be accessible, and I want to ensure that people are able to connect and to be in touch with me on any given day, 24 hours.
Lovely. Well, a lot of people say the youth is our future, but I usually say the youth is now.
Yeah.
How do you plan to inspire and engage young people in politics?
That one is a fairly difficult one, but I believe that we have to educate our youth. We have to encourage our youth to want to do things for themselves, to recognize that the future is theirs,
yes,
and that whatever they do is going to reflect on what measures, what plans, whatever they put in place. It is okay to sit on the block, earn some money as people pass and so on, but I believe that the young people have to get involved in politics. A lot of the young people are saying they don't want to get involved in politics. Politics is for them, all politicians are this and that. But politics is about laws, is about putting policies in place, putting programs in place for the future. And if you want your children and your children's children to have a future, then I believe that you should try to get involved.
And it's an avenue that your voice can be heard as well.
I always say that to young people as they go through the constituency, as they meet young people. You can't sit down and say people aren't doing anything for you. Because if you are not saying what you want, then people can't give you what you want. Because even as you canvas, people will say to you, well, I want to go and do things, and the boy don't tell you that they want this and they want that. So therefore, if you want something, then you come and you say it. Instead of doing this, then do that. Because this is not what we want. This is what the young people want, as opposed to what you think we want. So you need to get the young people in discussion to get their ideas and then see how you can use their ideas to put policies and programs in place to benefit.
If you don't stand for something, you fall for
anything.
Anything. That's correct. That's correct. What initiatives do you think are necessary to provide better opportunities for the next generation?
I think we have to, first of all, as I said, we need to find opportunities for education and for training. We need to be able to prepare our people. I am one that believes in the land. I believe in feeding ourselves. The late Karamita Fraser always had the mantra, eat what you grow and grow what you eat. And COVID ought to have taught us that it is necessary for us to, ensure that we have land available for food, be able to grow our own food. As I said earlier, I raise chickens, I raise a few pigs sometimes. The last 2 months or so, I ate a lot of pork because I killed a pig and I partly ate all myself. I can't even last I bought chicken from a supermarket because I don't want a plastic chicken. I prefer to grow my own chicken, to grow my own pig. I see people producing lettuce in the factories. I can't eat plastic lettuce. I grow my own. And I think that we have to encourage our people to grow food, to rear animals. And it would also cut down on our food import bill. I don't know why we import fruits from overseas, vegetables from overseas. By the time they get here, imagine bringing, well, let me say vegetables first. Imagine bringing vegetables from overseas by boat. If you pick a mango today or bananas today, you put them to ripen. I ripen my bananas in a box with leaves off the womanton tree and the sweet. I don't like I call them the bright green ones that people buy from overseas that ripen with gas. I prefer to put some womanton leaves in a box, put my bananas. I should have brought some this evening. They gave away a whole set this evening. The local bananas. I believe that we should grow our own stuff. Imported, we get a lot of bad stuff. Not necessarily at the initial stage, but in terms of the shipping and the time and so on, the movement and so on, you get a lot of damaged goods and so on. You go to the supermarkets and you buy, I see people growing the grapes here now, but you go tomorrow and you buy grapes. You look on the top and you see lovely grapes, but when you get home, you see the wrong ones to the bottom because the merchandisers have to sell out. Now, if you grow your own, then you know what you in terms of the meats. Now, I know we have shortages from time to time, and you hear that people, they import fresh meat from China. It left China fresh. It can't be fresh when it gets Barbados.
Yeah.
What people would do then is thaw it out. It might appear to be fresh. But the Chinese are good. I see them rearing pigs into a story pens and so on. So they're good. But I believe that we need to stick to local stuff. Reducing our food import bills, saving lots of foreign exchange. And so that is one of the things that I would want to encourage my Democratic Party to do once they win the next. Well, when we win the next election.
So, based on what you said just now, is a possibility that we are importing plastics.
I believe so.
Yeah.
I haven't tasted any, but I believe we are importing.
All right. Okay. So, how do you plan to respect the traditions of your constituency while also fostering innovation and progress?
Well, my constituency is one that is known for community development, sports, the finance creative workshop, and thing dance in Africa. So would have emerged from the Pine. Those are sort of dying as people, I guess, grow older. The younger people are not taking up these things. There are a few people, though, in the finance creative workshop that continue to work hard. I don't want to mention any names at this point, but looking coming back school, for example, benefit a lot from Shelly's work with Pinelands. And we have, from time to time, we would have people coming in with the landship and so on. So there are traditions in the Pine. We would have had a lot of sporting teams in the Pine. Those are dying out to some extent, trying to revive the football and so on. But it is people moving away from the traditional stuff and looking now more at the technology. So rather than you going over to Pinelands Creative Workshop, you might take a device and put up some game, and you can dance too.
Yes.
On the device. So people would rather do that. And our streets are not as safe as they were before. So again, when people would have gone to Pinelands maybe between 7 and 11, it is now a little risky to do it. So the tradition is still there. It's dying to some extent. I don't think there's anything that we can be innovative with, really. I always say that all the inventions have been done. I don't think we can invent anything now, but other than food and meat. But it's hard to invent anything now. But personally, I would want to see a lot of those old-time traditions to come back. I believe that people should be roller skating in communities. Yes. I believe that people should be riding bicycles. I believe that people should be on scooters. I believe that people should be cutting milk don't come in cans now, but what come in the can? Tuna? No. Using the tuna cans to make wheels for tractors and trucks and so on. I see young people pulling these things around. When they first made the milk, they actually taught to know how to do those things. And I think that those are things that children need to be doing. And recently we spoke about banning the toy guns and so on. But of course, if we don't import them, I can show I want to make these things out of wood and make gutter perks and be able to hit a bird and that kind of stuff. These are things that I think that we need to go back to. So it's not to innovate, but it is to go back to some of the traditional things that we enjoyed as children.
And it builds camaraderie.
Yes, definitely.
In a serious way. Huh? So you say Michael Southeast is known for its vibrant and robust community life. There's a number of housing developments. How do you plan to balance development with maintaining its cultural identity?
That is going to be fairly difficult. I think the Pine is the Pine. I don't think there is much that can be done in terms of changing the face of the Pine. It's known for its close-knit nature. What I would want to do, though, is, as I said earlier, to be able to spruce up a lot of the homes, to be able to assist people in terms of beautification, even community gardens and so on. In terms of the culture, we'll try to see how we can get persons back into Pinelands Creative Workshop, into using schools and communities for dance, for games, teach people skills, craft, home economics, that kind of stuff. But I would say that I would want not to lose have the Pineville, the St. Michael Southeast generally lose its identity. So I would just look for ways and means of enhancing it, and where things have gone dormant over the last few years, to see how best we can get these things back up and running.
And I hope you do. I hope you do. For sure. Okay. Are there any specific community projects you are passionate about starting or expanding in that particular constituency?
I want to be able to assist the constituents of St. Michael Southeast to, as I said, feed themselves. I also want to be able to drive through St. Michael Southeast on smooth roads. I also want to ensure that the young people in St. Michael Southeast maximize the opportunities for education. I believe that I have a project for St. Michael Southeast. I don't want to put it up there, but I think I ought to put it up there. If it comes to fruition, thank me for it. But I believe that the old training facility at the bottom of Point East West Boulevard, I believe that should be a nursery school. It is there lying just there. There are rooms there that can be used for classrooms and so on. It is fenced. It has mulberry trees, shaded areas, a nice old-time building. And I believe we need to restore it and use it as a nursery school. I believe the Pine Wildies and Michael Southeast community need to have a nursery school, as opposed to having to go over to Charles F. Bloom, the Maria Holder Nursery School. I would also want to see the constituency lit properly. I believe that is a challenge. If we can put additional lighting in some of these constituencies, we can get a lot of night activity. Yes. The fact that our streets are so dark, people are afraid. And now with the recent decision by the minibuses and the ZRs and so on to end work early, it is going to pose an even greater risk for people who may have to leave work at 5, can't get a bus until 7, getting home at 8, and so on. They have to walk into the communities of the point.
I really hope you rescind that decision. I really hope so.
Well, I would want them to rescind it, but I would also want the authorities to make the country safe, so that the owners and drivers of these public vehicles can ply the road. I believe that Barbados should have transportation 24/7.
Of course.
The hotels work 24/7, the KVH work 24/7, and I want to see the DLN Cochrane Polyclinic in the Pine with a 24-hour operation.
That'd be lovely. No doubt about it. Okay, so you're a returning candidate, having ran in 2022 general elections. How has things been going so far? Your canvassing and so forth.
Well, in the 22 general election, I was a first-time candidate, but I was not new to politics. I was exposed to politics from a very early age. I was a member of the St. Philip North branch from 1989, having come off of an aircraft from St. Lucia with the late David Thompson. We had a conversation, and he thought that people like myself should enter politics. Of course, I tried to get him before 22, but the door was tight. I couldn't get it pulled. So I was a new candidate in 2022. I enjoyed every day of the 3 weeks. We had the campaign. I covered most of my constituency. I practically did it alone. I was able to get a lot of speakers from outside of the constituency because it was a rough campaign, a rough election, and we really had to fend for ourselves. But I'm hoping that in the next election, with the experience that I have and the experience that the others have, that we can pace ourselves a lot more. We can deal with the issues more forcefully, and that we show ourselves as the superior party that we are, and ask the Barbadian public, and I'll do it now. We ask the Barbadian public to give us in the Democratic Labour Party the opportunity to be representatives of the people. I think what we have now are politicians who are not representing the interests of their constituents well. And we have to, as a party in the next election, to impress upon people that we are going to be representatives of the people. We are going to be there for them. We are going to do what is required, and that we are going to be accessible. And I believe once we provide the honest voices for the people, that the Democratic Party will have the opportunity to win the next general election. Certainly my task is to help by defeating the incumbent in St. Michael Southeast. I am asking the people to ensure that they are fair in their deliberations, let me put it that way. I cannot compete financially with the incumbent, and that is why I'm using the opportunity now to be able to reach out to people in the field and walking and meeting people, because I cannot afford on election day or the day before the election to be giving out envelopes and shirts wrapped up with things inside and that kind of stuff. And we have to be able to say to the electorate that buying people and buying votes is not necessarily what we want, because after an election and after you receive the shirt with the $100 or $200 in it, they have paid you for your vote. So if you don't get the roads, you can't make noise. If you don't get the job, you can't make noise. If you don't get the things that your children want, you can't make noise because you were paid for. So I think that our task, though, is going to be a serious one leading up to the next election, because we have to convince a very large percentage of the Barbadian population that they should vote. A lot of people are not willing to vote because of how they were treated by politicians previously. And we young people like Shaquani, I'm not that young, but young people like Shaquani and Curtis Cave and those fellas would, and those people, Shaquani is not a fellow, those people would have to go there and ensure that they stay focused. They say to people not what they want to hear, but say to people the things that will matter. Some people believe that perception in politics is all that it is. I don't think it is perception. I think that people want to have genuine and honest people representing them going forward, and I believe that Shaquani and the younger members of the Democratic Party would have that job ahead of them. I will assist in whatever way I can to ensure that I work with the younger candidates, work with candidates who are into it for the second time with myself, to ensure that we perform way above what we did last time.
Well, you really summed it up. You beat me to the punch, because I was just going to tell you, you could have a conclusion on your message, right? But you beat me to the punch. Where can your constituents, where can they find you?
Well, they can find me when you come back to primary. They can find me on my phone, 253-8488. My van is always in the area of St. Michael Southeast. A lot of people believe I actually believe I live in the Ivy or somewhere around there, because I spend most of my time on that side of the world. But people call me for testimonials, people call me for references from the constituency. I'm always available. And if you call a Democratic Labour Party 547-0710, they will direct you to me as well. that is how we are operating in this particular time. Always available, always.
Lovely, lovely. Glad to hear. And it was an absolute pleasure having you here.
Was my pleasure, Shaquani.
Yes.
Channel with you as well.
Yes, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So if you're now tuning in, this is DLP TV. We've just spoken to Mr. Pedro Shepherd. He is the candidate for St. Michael's South East. Now joining us, Miss Shaquani Hunte. She has so much accolades. She is the president of the Young Democrats. She's also the vice president of the Democratic Liberal Party. Good night to you, Shaquani. How are you doing today?
Hi, good night, everyone. I'm doing well as always.
Beautiful, beautiful. Always smiling, always energetic. I don't know where you're taking, but you would need to tell me what you're taking so you can get some as well.
I don't know, faith.
So many things you do, so many things you're involved in, always efficient. So outside of politics, what are some personal interests or hobbies that you enjoy? Sure.
What I would say is giving back, assisting people, working with the community, and I did all those things before I got involved in politics. That's what ended up getting me involved in politics.
Beautiful.
I was always involved in making sure that the people coming after me, they had it easier than I had it.
Lovely, 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 lovely. So how do you maintain? I mean, I mentioned so many accolades, so many activities you are involved in. How do you maintain a work-life balance and ensure you stay grounded?
What I would say is really a juggling act. There's no particular method of my balance. Is scheduling very, very tight on my schedule. If you have seen my computer, you know that I have a very tedious schedule for every single month of the year. But what I will say is if you cannot give 100%, give at least 90% to everything that you have decided to commit to. Along with that, it is okay to say no. You will not be able to do every single thing, but maybe you can suggest somebody else who can assist the person to achieve their goal.
Lovely, lovely. So can you tell us a bit about your background and what motivated you to enter politics? So you mentioned assisting people.
Yes.
So you can continue from there. No problem.
Where should I start? Because it is a very tricky path. But I will say I started in cosmetology almost 10 years ago. I'm young, but I've been in the work field for a long time. And while I was in cosmetology, I decided I wanted to go back to school. I realized that it was not enough. While I love helping people in that aspect, I wanted to help people more. And I always had a passion for the arts, so I went back and I did visual arts. And from there at BCC, I was like, oh my gosh, these conditions are horrible. We have terrible tables. The equipment was horrible. And we wrote a letter to the principal demanding that we need better conditions for the students. And I remember I told them, it didn't matter to us that we would be graduating from that particular class, but we wanted to make sure the students coming after us had an opportunity to have better equipment, a better environment, and a better working condition. And we were able to get the school to get the materials. We got together and we were able to get past and encourage students to volunteer. And we ended up refurbishing tables, refurbishing a whole set of things. And what I will say, we were able to bring a community of people passionate about the same things together. And with me, you will hear a lot of stories like that.
You're always an advocate, always a leader, it seems, from that tender age. Yeah.
What I will say is it's very easy to seem like you're a leader because you always have a plan. Having a plan is very important when you go in front of people because they need to understand that one, you believe in what you're talking about, and it's okay to trust you because you are as much invested in it as they are.
Okay. So what are some key experiences or challenges? I know you mentioned some. If you have some more, we can then do so. In your life that have shaped you to be ready today?
What I would say, growing up in the community has shaped my life. Many of the residents, we tend to see eye to eye a lot because we grow up in the same community, same struggle, same path. At the Young Democrats meeting, we recently had the public meeting. I mentioned on the platform playing in Westbury Cemetery because that was our play part. And so many people messaged me and reached out to me days after. asking me about it, and I told them, but that is the truth. We didn't have a park or a patch of grass to play on. We flew kites down there, we play tag down there, we play hide and seek down there. And it was really, when you think about what you had to go through growing up in the community and surviving it, you have no other choice to come back to that community and give back because they made you who you are.
No, we went down there, Camp St. Actually, you and I, and obviously the rest of the people in the party, and we heard stories of you being in Pampers. So people remember you being in Pampers, and all right. So,
What I will say,
yeah.
almost every single person had been in Pampers before, but yes, having a close connection to your community is very important, and keeping that connection alive. The fact that a resident can identify that they had to do that for me, that means that there's a connection there, and that's not the only story you will hear as you go through the community. Many houses, many different neighborhoods, you will hear similar stories, because it didn't start with I wanted to be a politician, is I wanted to help people, and those people helped me at some point in their life, whether it be small, walking me up to the gap, walking me to Saw. You have to remember the people who helped you and continue to pass on the good faith.
All right. Okay. So, what are the core values that guide you both personally and professionally?
What I will say, keeping committed to the goal and remembering that somebody younger than you is watching you. You might not be aware of it, but always be mindful that the next generation needs something to look up to. And just like me, I had someone, they need someone. So make sure that every time you step out the door, every time you go in front of a camera, you put your best foot forward at every step of the way.
Glad you mentioned connection. That is very important for me. So, what's your vision for your constituency, and how do you plan to achieve that vision?
Well, my vision for the community is very simple. Getting back to the community, raising the community. And with that, me and the community come together. Every time I speak to someone in the community, I always tell them, I can't do it without you. You cannot do it without me. It is a community collective, and we work on each element or each program together. For it to be sustainable, it cannot run without that. It cannot.
Yes, that is very correct. Okay, so how has your professional journey prepared you for a role in politics?
Well, I'm a project manager and I specialize in project execution and grant writing. So what I will say is, if you have ever organized anything, even if it's something as simple as a church activity, you know that you need to be in many places at once and be many different types of people to get anything pulled off. The goal is, if you set a standard or you say you're going to do something, you must execute it, because you have already made that promise to a person. Do not make promises that you cannot keep. And from my job and the role that I do, I understand that taking initiatives to the community, everything I say that I'm going to do, I will definitely execute.
Because tell you, project management, and you have to build relationships, and you have to deal with so many different personalities. There's no doubt about that all the time. So you're well equipped. Yes. Okay. So, what skills and insights from your previous job do you think would be beneficial in serving your constituents?
Being mindful that every single person is different and the personalities will differ. Meaning that when you go into a meeting with them, you need to be mindful that every person might not react the same way, and be mindful that it's okay for them to not react that way. It's okay to have a difference in opinion, and it's okay for us to leave the meeting not agreeing, and that is fine. When we start looking at people as individuals, we would understand that it's okay for them to be themselves, and I encourage that wholeheartedly.
So how have you been involved in your community up to this point?
Okay, well, let's start about the activities we're currently doing in the community. Recently, we would have done some projects where we would have cleared some abandoned spots where the grass were overgrown, cars were on these spots. So that was a project that we did together as a community. As I went into the area and I found out from the community what were some of their issues, we started to tackle some of these issues together. And I can say the guys in the community are amazing. I do not know what people have, why people have issues with the guys on the blocks, but they support me like nothing else. For the time they see you out there, it could be a room I hold and somebody can come and ask me if they can help. And it's not like just the older ones, the younger ones. I have so many people in the community who are young, who want to help, who may be going to school, but on their off days, they will message to find out if I need anything done, if there's any projects to work on. So the message that we are moving in the community is we can't do it without them and they can't do it without me. So as we tackle each project together, we find that it is a lot easier to navigate getting these programs and the initiatives done. So that is just one of the projects. Another project we took on was cleaning up in the park. I know you guys want to know, does the government clean parks? I would love to answer that and say maybe, but I don't know. This particular park was really overgrown. I remember the first time I saw it, I saw this guy on a seesaw and I wondered, why is this guy on the seesaw by himself? Like, he's so old, just one person on the seesaw. Then when the little person went into the air, I saw that the grass was so tall, I could not see his collar. And when I spoke to him, he was saying that they were complaining about the park. If they had access to equipment, they don't mind touching the grass. And I said, well, if that's the case, okay, we will get equipment. The next day, we went out there, we had weed whackers, we had lawnmowers, we had clippers. And I don't mean like 2 or 3 guys. The guys called me from off the block and they said, well, this is the things that we need. If you could drop them off, we can start in the daytime and then we can always finish up. They will call and say, well, we ran out of gas. If you could bring back more gas. And you know what I said? This is their home too. And when you think about it in that manner, this is their home too. It's not like they're looking for something. They just want the environment where their children are playing on the evening to be safe and cleaner. And with that, we have a committed set of people to maintain a park, along with just cutting the grass. We had a lot of the park equipment damage, and we are actually in the process of repairing that. And we already have the paint to paint those sections in the park. So the community is committing to making change. I know they do have a representative. Sometimes they wonder if they do, but we know they do. And I'm hoping if they're watching, they can probably assist us with some of these duties because, as I say, we cannot do it alone. And every single member of the community needs to pitch in to get these initiatives off the ground. And this is just the physical initiatives where we actually have to go in and repair or renovate locations. This has nothing to do with the real struggle in the community, which is reading. Walking through my community, so many people have told me that they have a lot of issues with children not being able to read. Whether the children are between ages 5 to 15, they have a huge issue with that. And being that, I spoke to a lot of the members in the community and parents, non-parents, a lot of them have committed to assisting with reading programs. So in saying that, our goal is to currently launch 2 reading programs in the community. We have already got the parents and the community on board. The next task I'm asking Barbadians is that we need the books. I've asked for book donations and we do have some coming in, but I'm asking you to donate to us. We're definitely relying. It doesn't have to be new. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're looking for books that we can teach people at beginner level or intermediate level. And if you're willing to assist us, I'm going to say my number, so get your pen and paper right now. My number is 823-8946. And I'm going to get them to put it on my screen. So if you don't have it as yet, it's 823-8946. If you don't get me on a call, just send me a WhatsApp. But we're looking for book donations. And if you're a company and you want to do a bigger donation, just reach out to me as well. As I said, we're looking to do two programs at this time. But what I will tell you is that I'm looking to pull along the whole of St. Michael with me. So any area in St. Michael that's looking to get a reading program off the ground, we're pulling you along and we're pulling along your communities as well. We're going to start there, but we're not going to end there because we at the Democratic Liberal Party take reading so important. We cannot just decide that, oh, this is the generation that wouldn't be able to read. No, it's not good enough. And we will be doing our part, so we need you to do your part as well.
Ah, lovely. Yes. So can you share a specific instance where you made a tangible impact in your community? I mean, you mentioned a good number already. So you answered that question to a certain extent. But one specific, you saw some tears of joy, anything.
My thing is that we help people all the time. I don't necessarily like publicizing the help we give to people because that is private between me and the person that asks for help. What I will say is that if you need help, we will help you if we can. And if we can't help you personally, we turn you on to getting help. In that aspect, what I will say is that people have reached out to us saying that they need assistance with renovating their houses. And I told them, you know what we will do is I get my team, because as I said, I'm in project management, but one of the projects that I manage is also site construction. So in doing that, I have a contractor on standby. So usually if any persons have issues with house repairs, what we will go in and do is go to the house, do assessment, get an estimate in, and then we will go through the authority with the government, because although I'm not the representative, I will still try to assist you in terms of going through that process. If I can get donations for you for a small project, I will. And what I will say, we have a lot of people in community with pig toilets. I mean, a lot. And in this day and age, in 2025, no person should have a pig toilet. And I know I've heard other members of the Democratic Labour Party mentioning this before. And in this community, we have a lot of pig toilets. And if the representative should then be on that. If I know about it, and I now started as the candidate for the DLP, I feel like they had more than enough time to actually make impact and changing over some of these into a regular toilet.
I totally agree. In 2025, that's very interesting.
It's a necessity in these times.
Still big toilets. It's something.
It is hard.
Okay, so what do you think are the most? I mean, you mentioned a lot of pressing issues. What do you think most pressing issues currently in your constituency?
In my constituency, one of the most pressing issues is the fear of crime.
Yeah.
I know we have a lot of stigma with the guys on the block are the ones committing the crime, but I also have a lot of issue with the guys on the block of fear of the crime. I have experience going into the community where guys are not even living outside of where they live just for the fear of they may be caught up by a stray, but they are caught up in something that they don't want to be involved in. They really just go there to relax, spend time outside of the house, but they don't want to be involved in crime. And because of the current state of crime in Barbados, there's a stigma on them because they're on the block. They are part of the issue in crime. And for them, that is a real issue. A lot of them are trying actively to get jobs, going through the whole process.
Yes.
And at some of the end of that, they don't even know why they don't even get the job. So we're actually in the process of assisting some of them with the CVs, getting some of them who own their own business to like expand the businesses into a more corporate level. So it's going to take a while, but we're hoping that we can work with the government. We know the DLP's Commission for Crime will be issuing a report soon. And with that, I am hoping the government can take some of those ideas and solutions to actually make change to the current crime issue in Barbados, because it's really impacting us at the ground level a lot. The fact that people are so afraid to sit on their step is an issue. I remember times walking at night, just outside as a child. Now you're having issues with children walking to the shop. When you look outside at 5 o'clock, it's getting dark. Hardly any people are on the road. I drove through my own neighborhood in a different car, and the people from my neighborhood start to walk towards the car. They start to look to see what was going on. When they noticed it was me, they was like, "Oh, you can't be too sure." So imagine they're just sitting outside waiting, eating bread, waiting for the bread van, drinking drinks, and they're so afraid that an unusual car coming through the gap may be a drive-by, because it's happening to people who are not involved in anything. They just happen to be the wrong place, the wrong time. And with that type of fear in society, we have a lot to worry about. I had an 18-year-old trying to help his family because he has a young child, and he started to sell bottled water at the side of the road. He went out one day, and I asked, "So why are you not going out anymore?" And he said, There's so much violence in the road, so much thieving and stealing. It's safer for me to be at home. I was like, but you were on the outside. How unsafe could it be? And he said, but I saw somebody got robbed. So I decided it didn't make sense going back outside there. I would just stay home. So imagine he tried to help himself, but the environment was so unsafe. He decided that it wasn't worth losing his life. So young people now have to tackle between staying alive or providing for their family. How do you choose between the two where both are so vital?
Well, it was a crime and remiss of me not to mention you are the spokesperson for
Yes.
big issue, youth and jobs. Huge issue. You see plethora of ads in the paper that said jobs, but then when you go there and you ask the question, what is going on regarding why you're on the road, why are you not in a workplace?
Okay, we have a couple of issues. The Ministry of Youth would have just launched this opportunity where you can submit your CV to go to the job fair they would have had for job opportunities for police officers or firemen. Before I sent it out on my WhatsApp to my contacts, what I usually do with these things, I click the link to see if it's working to make sure people don't have issues when they go on it. I clicked the link, it told me, unfortunately, they're at capacity. This was 14 hours after they posted this. I saw people in the comments commenting saying, the link is already full. What should we do? This was only 14 hours after they posted. And it made me wonder, what was your capacity? Because I can understand you have a certain amount of jobs available, but what was your capacity to interview? Because it can't be cut off on the interview limit. And I keep hearing them saying that we have a low turnout rate for people applying to be police officers. So how can you shut down the capacity? I really want to know from the Office of the Ministry of Youth, what was your capacity for these job applications? When we have so many young people, so many people, because the age group was 19 to 35, that means that they were just looking for people. What was your cutoff rate? And so many people still wanted to apply. How are you planning to assist these people who are currently still looking for jobs? We can't just say over the phone, unfortunately. Are you not going to accept the CVs and just keep them on file in case more available opportunities come up? I had a young gentleman who told me he submitted his CV 5 years ago to the post office. He had CXCs, a police certificate of character, all the requirements. And he made mention, he made sure he told me, and I went Carson College, and I told him, but that is not what I asked you. I did ask him if he had a CV already. And he said, it is so hard to find a job. He said he had to start his own business because he couldn't get a job. And he wanted to be a postman. So as something as simple as wanting to be a postman, and we know we have an issue with getting mail on time, he couldn't even get the job. He said he didn't even get a response. He wasn't sure what was going on. He's not even sure if they got the letter at the post office. So for him, I find that I have a lot of young people at the verge of giving up. I have a lot of young people going to UV, BCC, studying, doing courses, and I always say sometimes they're studying things that they can't get jobs for. And it's not because they're not jobs up there, but we literally have our young people studying things that they can't get jobs for. I saw the other night when I was watching the Marcia Week show, somebody mentioned that they study biochemistry, but they can't get any jobs here.
Yeah.
Of course they can't get any jobs here because we're not opening up the facilities for our young people to get jobs in these fields. And I know we have the opportunity for them to get jobs in these fields. I have so many friends who went overseas and studied and didn't come back. Some of them asked me if they should come back. I said to come back too long. Your job, the field that you're studying, we don't have any way to accommodate you here. I have people who specialize in IT and cybersecurity. They apply for jobs here. They can't even get them, even though we're looking for people in cybersecurity. So it really makes me wonder, are we actually looking to hire people? Or let me rephrase that. Are we actually looking to hire young people where majority of our younger generation are not employed, are currently looking for work, and when they go, they constantly turn around? I have a lot of people leaving school at 16 years old. And when they go to jobs, they're told that they need Tamex numbers. They can't get the job without it. But they can't go automatically and register because they're 16. They don't allow 16-year-olds or 17-year-olds to sign up.
Oh boy.
I remember when the Minister of Youth spoke about this, and he said that if they needed assistance, they could come to his office. And somebody asked him, "Claymore?" No, in St. John. I was like, okay.
Oh boy.
My young 16-year-old person that I know, I'm supposed to give them directions to your constituency office in St. John when the Ministry of Youth is right there at Claymore, an easier location to find. Furthermore, I'm not even going to say that. Why have you not spoken to Thomas, already put something in place to accommodate people who are 16 to 17 years old on the site to register for themselves, or even for a parent to assist them? Why do they have to go to a physical location to do this? This is ridiculous. We are in the age where every time you go to a government department, they're telling you, oh, it's online. It's a digital process. Well, then you need to get your IT personnel to update the system to allow people to do this. It's ridiculous that I need to give a person roughly $14 a bus fare to go to St. John. It is ridiculous.
It's too much right there. Too much right there.
We are making simple tasks too difficult. Something as simple as getting, I want to say, an NAS card. It should be simple. I know a young person who went for an NAS card. He came home with an NAS card, but he was told that he needs to laminate it himself. They gave him the laminate. Apparently, lamination machine was not working. I was like,
oh dear.
Who 16-year-old do you know have a lamination machine at home? This is ridiculous. It is a government. You're trying to tell me an official document from government, you sent a person home to do a piece of the process for themselves. We need to do better. We need to do better.
That is not working along with a lot of things. I can tell you that. Yeah, I can tell you that. So, okay, how do you plan to inspire and engage with it? Obviously, you are the sports person. Plan and inspire young people in politics.
Okay. My goal for that is pretty simple. Keep it about them, and inspire them will become easier. I don't need to inspire somebody to care about themselves because they care about it. They generally want the best for themselves. Yeah. So when you explain that a future where they don't vote is a future where they give it the right to make sure that they have a better lifestyle for themselves in the future, or a future where they don't vote, that means that you don't get opportunity to say, well, I want more job opportunities for younger people. Or it is very difficult as a first-time person coming out to UE to get a job because they don't have 3 years of work experience. But how can you get 3 years of work experience if you're a student? It's impossible. So technically, when you go to some of these jobs, you see some of these interviews, you already know off the bat you can't get a job because you don't have the basic requirement. So a lot of jobs don't cater for the fact that you have people coming directly out of the schooling system into the workforce. Also considering that they have the Give Back Our program. As I say, sometimes we have good ideas that need work, and this is one of the programs that need a lot of work. Having a good idea is just not enough. You need to make sure that students are able to volunteer their time in the fields they actually work in. And also, you need to check out with some of the locations they're volunteering at. As a full-time student, students are required to do, I think it is 150 hours per semester based on how long your degree is. Meaning that along with being a full-time student, you may also be a working full-time student. But you also have to do these Give Back hours. And something is very difficult to get these hours off the ground. And then you have to get someone to sign off to say that you did them. So sometimes people volunteer, but then they never get any person to sign off. And it's truly frustrating when, say, you're studying finance and then you can't get to volunteer anywhere else. The only place you can possibly maybe volunteer is probably maybe an event. Or, sometimes the government say they're looking for volunteers to do surveys, or they're looking for volunteers to work at proper activities. So that's not really technically in their field. Yes, it's a good opportunity, but it's not an opportunity that they can use as work experience. So again, I go back to they still don't have enough work experience for the job that they're looking to get. So if a program like that can actually be factored in, and my suggestion to them was that you have a lot of government entities currently, a lot of them are understaffed. run some of these volunteering opportunities through the government. Give them opportunities. I'm not saying that people should have to work for free. Stipends are great because, as we know, bus fares are extremely high. So, putting the point that bus fares are extremely high, remember that do not expect them to come and not want anything. You're going to ask them to show up 5 days a week, 3 days a week. How are they going to get there? They don't work. Some of them are students. Some of them maybe have just enough money to make it. I remember when bus fare first went up, I had a friend at that time who spent $21 a day on bus fare.
For what year?
And some weeks she had to decide which days were the most important days to come to school because she couldn't afford to do every single day because it wasn't just her that was going to school. So her and her siblings had to decide which days they would go to school, what days were most important, and calculate who can go to school. So when we consider things like raising bus fare for students, raising bus fare or implementing programs where students will have to pay additional money to get to these activities, you also need to consider that they can't have it. The times are a lot harder than when some of these things were implemented. I went to the supermarket recently and I realized mixed meat went from $4 a package to $7 a package. That is crazy. So imagine a person being able to afford to make a meal for roughly $10. You don't have to look for extra money that they may just not have. So these things are difficult, and a lot of young people, when they get to a certain age, their parents ask them to bring money in. So it's not just living home for free. Even if you're a student, you're expected to bring home something because it's hard for your parents as well. Yes. So along with all that, you have that pressure to be a breadwinner. When you don't even know how you can get school tomorrow, but you have to figure out how to get it done. So we're putting a lot of unneeded pressure on our younger generation and still expecting them not to be angry, not wanting to support what is going on. But the young people of today, they're not just going to sit back anymore and just take whatever the government's going to say. They're not going to just sit back and not question things. And that is why I expect that we will have a lot more young people voting this election coming.
Great. Lovely.
I can tell you it.
And I just want to pause and just mention the viewers are loving you, by the way. Right? They love you too. They love you too. They love you too. They love you too. No doubt about it.
We love you here.
Yeah. So what initiatives do you think are necessary to provide better opportunities for the next generation?
Oh gosh. Shall I start with the initiatives the government already have that can be fixed, or should I start with new ones? But you know what? We'll see. We don't need to reinvent the wheel to make something work. We just need to make sure the wheel is round and it can spin. Because that is the problem with some of these government initiatives. We have an idea and it's not quite ready for the public, but they still started without thinking through the whole process. What I will say is that young people need opportunities. Again, watching the Marcia Week show, I saw a young person ask, will we, the DLP, implement grant opportunities for UWI students? And I said, well, the government is currently in power. Why haven't they implemented grant opportunities? We have so many UWI students with great ideas. And I know some of them can tackle some of the issues that we're facing in Barbados. Imagine if you put a grant on the table for students to apply to fix these issues, the incentive for them to execute it, the ability for them to earn something while executing the program. You have now killed two birds with one stone. And I didn't have to do a lot of thinking. I don't have 29 people behind me to get it done. I just have the DLP, I have Barbados, and this is not hard. For some reason, it seems sometimes that the government is making things harder than it should be. You already have facilities with people learning to be better, with people energetic about working and making it better for the next generation and for themselves. Why are you not trying to give them the best tools, the best equipment? I remember I pitched somebody an opportunity to help some students, and I told them, you imagine this is what they could do with nothing, with $0. You imagine if they had something to work with, what standard they could produce? So thinking that we need to up the standard that our students are getting access to. And then we better equipment, top of the line equipment. There's no reason why students should still be working on subpar equipment to execute at a level that the international standard is at, and then you're calling because it's not the same. you need to, I've seen the estimates. The budget's looking big, but where's the money going? Because the equipment is the same. I don't want to sound biased, but I feel like I'm one of the younger ones in the party. And I recently left secondary school many years ago. When I was at school, I was using an accounts book from 1998. And when we went into the exam, the terminology had updated. So every single person in the exam looked around at one another. And we realized we don't know these terms. What are this? What is this? So something as simple as that, I mean, we were still able to succeed. We had to apply common sense, but it shouldn't have to be this difficult. Students pay for books. You're trying to tell me at no point are we going to recognize that was maybe at some point in time we may need to update some of these things. So something as simple as updating the books. It's not hard. You will know that a book that is from 1998 should not still be used. Let me see. But that was probably around 2012, around 2009. But I will say that's a lot of years into there. We need to be mindful, and that means that we need to stick on top of when things are getting older, obsolete. I remember when I trained to be a cosmetologist. I told somebody from water back down I took to the facility because every single day there was an issue. And it wasn't the fact that the government did not supply, it's that it was never enough. You imagine having to take water to a facility because the water in that area was always low at a certain time of day every single day. So because we would have to do relaxes, we would have to bring gallon bottles of water, like what I take to St. Lucie. Those gallon bottles, those 10 gallon bottles to make sure that if we would do a client's hair, we can wash it out. So simple things like that. If a school is in a lower water zone, you need to make sure that they have the adequate facilities on site. So water tanks, pumping stations, simple things like that would have made my life easier. I wouldn't have had to walk to school with 3 and 4 gallons of water just to execute something as small as making sure a person didn't get a chemical burn. So we need to stay more in contact with our community and our young people. And thinking that our young people don't know what is going on is not good enough. I remember going to, what was it? It was a town hall meeting at Carson College where they were talking about, what do you call that program now? Oh, what is, I cannot even remember the name. It will come back to me. But so many students got up and spoke about how the implementation would affect them if they really thought it through. I was thinking about that. I was in line waiting to speak, and I had 10 students before me. And after I heard them, I just put down my note. They said they weren't taking any more people after. I think about 5 more. And I was 1 5, and I stepped back and let the student go in front of me. I said, well, if the representative from the government are feeling like or looking like they're being pushed back into a corner and trying to defend this so hard for people who are 15 and 14, I don't need to say anything because they know that this program isn't good enough. I remember a student asked them, what is the budget for this program? And they said, well, we haven't thought about the budget as yet. And I said, wait. You have produced a document. You had town hall meetings for people to come and speak on the issues and raised from the document. But you have not considered the cost of what it would be to implement all of these things that you suggested. Not good enough. And something that they didn't have to come to that meeting to figure out that they need a budget. Sometimes I wonder if the government forgot that they educated us, that education is free and they educated us. I question that a lot because sometimes when they bring things to the table, I say, man, no. We're educated people. We know that to execute a project, you need a budget. And for a project to actually make sense, you need a budget that makes sense, that's actionable, not something that you can't get off the ground. So turning these schools into, what do they call the sending to the schools? Huh? No, not the specialist schools. Yes, the academies. I told somebody, they just changed up the name. You're trying to tell me, why do you need a specialized school? If the issue you're saying is with the 11 plus, you're gonna reinvent the whole wheel to come out to the same point. No, that does not make sense. When you look at how many people have passed through second the 11 plus, the issue isn't with the system of getting from primary to secondary school, is the pressure that we put on the students. And I said the pressure we put on the students because we have to consider that these are young people and pressuring them at that tender age is difficult. So maybe instead of putting all the pressure on them, then that is not what we should do. We need to evaluate how we may give the exam to the students. I remember the day when I said 11 plus. I asked my grandmother, are you coming to the school with me? Is anyone coming with me? She said, do I go to school with you on a regular basis? I said, no. She said, exactly. Why do I need to come with you when you're doing the exam? Go to it like you're going to school, and then there's no pressure. I said, okay. And that was it. I went in and it came out. So when you think about the added pressure that you put students on, why can't we just do it at the regular schools where they go to school every single day? Maybe just ask the rest of the students not to attend. That has already cut half of the pressure. I remember doing it at Comamere. I was so nervous. I've never been to a school so big. I didn't know how to get to the washroom. It seemed like, oh, the desks are so big. Everything seemed strange. So imagine something as simple as changing the location of where the students are doing the examination can already take half of the pressure off of them. And I didn't have to wait till I got into government to come up with that idea. It's simple. We need to stop overthinking some of these situations and start just using our brains, utilizing the free education that we will say our forefathers have given us. And Barrow, let's go back to Barrow. I know people always complain that we mention Barrow too much. But one thing we can definitely be grateful for is that he gave us free education and we need to utilize it. We don't need to, as I say, use a square wheel to get programs off the ground. We just need to use our brains. And even though an initiative or suggestion is coming from the party in opposition, that doesn't mean that it's not good. We need to start putting politics before people. If we continue to put people first every single time, we will realize that a lot of these issues will not be issues. Because we have a lot of good ideas that was developed under the DLP's administration that was stopped just because it was the DLP administration. And I believe that we are better than this. I'm going to say I mean the Barbadian people. We're better than this. We're better than putting politics before people.
Well, I can tell you this, right? You are extremely young, but you have such a wealth of experience. It is totally amazing. And we really, really appreciate each and every time. So, you say Michael West has its unique needs and advantages. How do you plan to harness and enhance these for the benefit of all residents?
Well, I will say one of the biggest advantages from this area is our community spirit. Somebody told me I should map my constituency, like map the houses. I told them, have you ever been to my constituency? There's houses behind houses on top of houses. Like I go through a canal to get to some houses. If you know where I'm talking about, you know my constituency. We go through the back of canals, go across pieces of wood. We home. I know somebody, if you've never ran through the canal, not even on the wood, just in it, you don't know where I'm talking about. So you're not from out there. And what I will say is that the biggest thing is our community spirit and showing up for each other. What I will say, we had the Young Democrats spot meeting out there, the public meeting. A lot of people told me the days afterwards, I had a lot of residents coming up to me. Man, I could hear you from inside the house. It was so clear. It was so good. I didn't realize that your voice was so strong. And you were just identifying so many issues in the community. And I said, somebody asked me, "Will your next meeting with me?" I said, man, I can keep it posted. We will have a next one. Don't feel like this is the last meeting. Know that we have told you what the issues were based on what you told me. It is putting the pressure on the representative to get some of these issues fixed. We will do our part, but they must do their part as well. So our biggest thing in the community is the community support and coming together to get something done.
Beautiful, beautiful. What strategies do you propose for economic and social development in that constituency?
Well, what I will say is that we already started. Let me just put out there, we already started. We're not going to wait till the bell will be rung. We have started. Nobody wants to not have money. Nobody wants to not be able to pay the bills. And at this point, even people with jobs looking for jobs. Can you imagine that? You have a job, you're still looking for a job because you can't afford it. So in saying that, taking my 10 years of experience being an entrepreneur, owning my own business, we're now bringing that into the community. Everybody will not own a business, but you know what? Everybody knows how to hustle. And whether that hustle is your everyday where you're just working a little bit extra overtime, or you may be working along with somebody who owns a small business. I have a guy in my constituency who owns a landscaping company. He doesn't have a vehicle. I said, but does anybody else in the community have a landscaping company and that drives a vehicle? Maybe you guys can come together, and then instead of having the issue with not having a license, not having a vehicle, you know, have a partner who has a license, who have a vehicle, and you have now solved one of the problems that you had. You can now get to locations that are further than within the constituency. He also mentioned, man, I want a little bit more job. I said, well, there are a lot of companies in the area. What you can do is get your shirt done. We can get the shirt done. We can get the business cards. We can approach the companies and you can let them know, well, I want to cut your grass. I can come every 3 weeks. This is the day I can do for you. If you want to see what my work will look like, this is what it looks like on my Instagram page. So some simple things to help people who have existing businesses, make them more efficient, more sustainable. We're already started. And we will continue to start it. In terms of, what is the next element that you were asking me about?
I've asked you about social development, economic and social development.
Social development. I don't want to let too much of the vibe because what I will say, we're already, in my community, we're already doing a lot. So I will say on the other side, they need to catch up to me. But as we continue to do a lot, one of the things that I find is at the heart of my constituency, they love football. When I say they love football to the fact that they're playing football in the road. We had to reach out to one of these schools because they were having issues getting access to the school. But that issue has now been fixed and they can use the school. But walking through the community, from the 35-year-olds to the 5-year-olds playing football in the road. And I don't mean like in a big road. It is like the size of a cart road, but paved with water in the gutter. They love it so much that they found that even if they didn't have access to a pastor, they didn't have access to a field, they didn't have access to the school, they meant that they wanted to be outside, they wanted to be within the community, so they found a way to be out there. And with that, one of the things we're looking to do is get some football programs off the ground. We already have committed coaches. We already have commitment for the parents and the grandparents because I told them when we start these programs together, you need to make sure the children don't miss them. Make sure they come out, and I will do like what my former lessons teacher used to do. When you don't show up, call the parents up and know where are you? We're waiting until you get here, and that's what we believe. When you're a part of the community, that means that we have to check up on the community. And with that, we continue to check up on each other.
There you have it, viewers. Shaquani, you are ready. Viewers,
we are ready.
Shaquani, we are ready.
We are ready.
No. Any last words for your constituent?
What I will say is, not only my constituents, because I believe that Barbados is watching me.
Barbados, yes.
Barbados, I am still accepting donations for these, but as I told you, we have a mission to get this program off the ground, and I cannot do it without you, and my constituency cannot do it without you. We're looking for bucks. The number that you can call or WhatsApp is 823-8946.
Say it a little slower. Once again.
823-8946. What I like to tell people, make sure you have your paper and pencil with you because you need to take notes. We will come back at the end and ask you if you have the number. If you don't have the number, and for those who have it, put it in the comments so other people can guess it. We are definitely looking forward for you for assisting us with getting this initiative off the ground.
Beautiful. There you have it, Miss Shaquani Hunte. I just want to pause for a second. I want to thank the Honorable Opposition Leader, Mr. Ralph Thorne. He has been in Parliament. He has been championing our cause in a serious way against all of them, right? And against all odds. So I just want to take some time out and I want to say a heartfelt gratitude. Now, we have another special guest, Miss Maxine McClean. I just want to make sure that we have good volume and everything. Good night to you, Miss Maxine McClean.
Good night to you, to General Secretary Pedro Shepherd, and to Shaquani Hunt.
Hi.
I was listening to part of what you said, and Ramon, as usual, you're doing a good job as host and, chairing the proceedings, so to speak.
Thank you very, very much. So you've had a distinguished career, including roles as former minister and leader of government business in the upper house. Could you tell us a bit about what the experience was like? I'll start with that question first.
What was the experience like? Well, the interesting thing, it was a challenge. I came to that in what I would say in having done a whole set of things, which I thought came together in a complementary way to make it a lot easier. So while it was challenging, and I would say that my years of teaching at the university, I served on a number of corporate bodies. I spent many years as a volunteer in the credit union movement, and so all of these things. And like Shaquani, I was an entrepreneur at one point. And I don't mind giving you the years because I am not shy to tell people my age. And I say I will stop telling them when to stop saying, but I spent 17 and a half years teaching at KFL. The half year was because I went to teach for one term and spent an additional 17 years full-time teaching. After I left full-time teaching, I started my own consulting firm, and I worked for 10 years. And during that period and before that period, I served on the board of the Goddard's group of companies, Goddard's Enterprises Limited. I was chairperson at one point of the Bristol Cruise Terminal, serving on that board for about almost 15 years on the stock exchange and some other things. I was a director of two commercial banks, CCB as it was called, Caribbean Commercial Bank, which was then taken over by RBTT Bank. And I was doing that kind of thing until I was asked to join the cabinet. So the beautiful thing about that, as a lecturer in management, these things came together. And so when I was invited by late Prime Minister David Thompson to join the cabinet as a minister in the Prime Minister's office, I also would have started my work life as a clerical officer at the welfare department, in the accounts department. So I knew something about government. I was involved in NGOs. And so I think that I was able to bring a diverse mix of experiences and experience as well, experience and experiences in the difference that I had years of acting and, working in several areas. And then I had many occasions to be part of several things, which gave me multiple perspectives. The challenge came, however, as leader of government business. Our first sitting, if you remember, we came into office in 2008 in January. The election was January. And so the government came into the estimates debate. That was the first sitting of Parliament that I attended. And if you look at the rules, the standing orders, the person who leads off the debate has 2 hours to speak. And so I spoke for 2 hours. It was a little daunting, but what I was able to do was draw on my years of teaching. So it's been an interesting experience in relation to the Prime Minister, being a minister in the Prime Minister's office. I dealt with a number of issues. Some of them were not the most popular. I was responsible for immigration at one point, at a time when there were several issues, in relation to persons working, employers having workers who were not legally or, in working legally according to the immigration requirements, etc. So there were a number of issues like that. After 11 months, there was a reshuffle, and I went across to Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade. And the interesting thing there with that reshuffle, the ministry was renamed. It was initially Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Foreign Trade, and International Business. And in that ministry, we had Minister Christopher Sinclair, and as the Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and Minister Innes, I think he might have been a Minister of State, but he had responsibility for international business. And then with the reorganizing after 11 months, the international business was seen as a critical part of a separate ministry, and that was taken off. And I became Minister of Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade, and I was there by myself. But again, because of my years of my graduate studies, I actually did a joint master's in Ohio, and I would have done a master's in international affairs. So I went into even though I might not have been utilizing a lot of my training directly, I went into a ministry understanding what foreign affairs and foreign trade was. So that's a whole set of things. So
Beautiful.
I hope that satisfies your question.
Of course. And we can go right to the meat of the matter here, right? Okay, so in the lower house, they're in the midst of debating the estimates.
Right.
For those of us who aren't as familiar with the inner workings of the government, could you give us a general overview of what the estimates process entails?
Okay, well, basically the estimates is a process which is required to authorize the passing of the estimates, let me say, the appropriation bill, because it is a piece of legislation which goes to Parliament. The name is the appropriation bill, and it is about appropriating funds to be applied, to cover the expenditures of government. And they also reflect the projected revenues, etc. So in terms of a process, ministries are required, let's say probably maybe around August. I'm trying to remember the exact dates. Sometime last year, certainly just beyond maybe the 2/3 into the financial year. The financial year of government being April 1st of any year to March 31st of the following year. So they have to prepare expected expenditures, and where there are revenue generating or collecting agencies. They also have to make projections as to what kinds of funding, resources, what kinds of revenues they will generate. And they prepare these, they're presented to the Ministry of Finance, and there's a discussion, especially where people are making requests for sums of money to spend. So there's a discussion, and a Minister of Finance and the official public officers in Ministry of Finance, they sit down and they come to an agreement as to, okay, we accept that this is a reasonable level of expenditure in a particular area. I will use the ministry I was responsible for. In terms of foreign affairs, you have missions of overseas, your diplomatic missions, your embassies, your high commissions. So you have to allocate budgets for those things. So you those things come together, and they are brought together in a single document, which is described as the estimates for the particular year. And it's a huge document, probably over 600 pages when you're finished. And then there's also another document which is presented the schedules of personal emoluments or salaries. So you can see what salaries are being paid. Now, having prepared that, it has to be approved by Parliament. But Parliament, it goes to the House of Assembly, and we are seeing that process now. And what happens there is that there's a debate that takes place. Now, the upper house, the Senate, does not rule or debate what they call money bills, because I think the thinking behind that is that the Senate is appointed, and therefore they do not sit and decide whether money should, these things should be approved. But they do debate the resolution in a somewhat different way. But let me focus on what happens in the House. Traditionally, let me put it this way. When you are debating a piece of legislation, there are two stages of that. One is called the second reading. And well, the first reading is to put the bill, because before it becomes an act or legislation, it's called a bill until it is approved, and then it becomes an act. But there's it is presented, that's called the first reading. So you would, for example, here in the House, somebody said, beg to move the first reading of the appropriations bill. That probably would have been done sometime last week or week before. I'm not sure. I didn't follow which date was done. But it then comes to Parliament, and there's a debate. Now, in this case, the Minister of Finance will probably start off in the traditional way of doing it, start off the debate. And you start with what are called second reading speeches. And they typically are what that is. So people will talk about the general issues. Let's say if you're Minister of Foreign Affairs, the general issue of foreign affairs, Barbados's relationship with, if the minister were in the House of Assembly, what's happening in the current international arena, what's happening within CARICOM, etc. And have those general discussions. Once those second reading speeches are done, the next stage in the House of Assembly would be to go into what called committees. And that's where I would say, to put it simply, you dissect the contents of the bill. Now, in the context of the estimates, that committee stage is called Committee of Supply, because they are, and I hope I remember all these things, because remember I was in the upper chamber and I don't have a copy of the standing orders of the House in front of me. But it goes into Committee of Supply where people start to discuss it. Now, traditionally, if you recall, over several administrations, both Democratic Labour Party and Barbados Labour Party, the estimates debate tended to be a long series of second reading speeches. So MPs will get up and speak, and oftentimes some would use it to speak to their constituents and update them, etc. The challenge with that, if that process happened, was that you did not, because there's a time limit over which the estimates have to be debated and passed. So in essence, what would happen is that when you got into the second reading, the committee stage, where you, as I said, you would start to look at the details of the estimates. For example, how much money is allocated in the Attorney General's office for, and I would use an example that's very, very topical, and as you would have heard, and certainly it was raised by the leader of the opposition, the peace program. You may want to look at how much money is allocated to support the work of the Barbados Police Service, or whatever the case may be. And this evening they were talking about people empowerment, and the minister would have spoken and was questioned about how much money would have gone for care of the elderly, and whatever the case may be. And so it was felt that that's how you dealt with those things. In 2019, this administration decided that they wanted to change the arrangement, because they were making the case that there needed to be greater debate and discussion of the contents of the estimates. Now, you can do that by managing what I would call the second reading speeches. So you could say it as a leader of government business in the House of Assembly, and at your parliamentary group meetings before, you could decide and impose some discipline and say, look, we really want to delve into these things, and therefore we will limit the second reading speeches and spend our time focusing more on the content. Now, and I certainly agree with that. One of the things, though, that was decided was that rather than have the members of Parliament, your cabinet members, be the ones to be responsive to, to speak to these things, there was a decision to bring public servants into the well of Parliament. Let me just backtrack to say that the expectation, because we did have in 2018 an anomalous situation where there was a 30-0, and then we had Reverend Atherley become leader of the opposition. So you had a one-person opposition in the House of Assembly, and that allowed for the appointment of 2 senators. Fast forward to now, we have a similar situation. But what is normally expected in the House is that in the estimates debate, the members of government will be quizzed by the opposition to get them to explain in detail how the money was spent. So the expectation is that in a typical situation where you have an opposition, in addition to the government, you will have the members of the opposition quizzing and seeking explanations. And let me just say, Ramon and Pedro and Shaquani, if you want to stop me at any point to explain something, you can do that. To ask anything, that's okay.
You don't mind asking a question now?
All right, go ahead.
Yes, I noticed that the estimates, if you look at the estimates, though, they are fairly similar year after year. And I wonder what is the real need to bring the public officers in the parliament, in the well, as we call it. I know the parliamentarians have immunity. Can you say whether or not these public officers who are brought into the well have the same parliamentary immunity?
No, they do not. No, they do not. In fact, you've just touched on something which I think that really and truly is a concern for myself as somebody trained in management and who has an understanding of parliamentary procedure, etc. And it has to do with what I would call it relates to there are provisions in our Constitution, the doctrine of separation of powers in our Constitution. And by that, I mean that the state power is divided into 3 broad categories. It's the parliament, where members of parliament meet in the 2 chambers, the cabinet or the executive, as you call it. That is what I would call the people who manage the economy, the matters, so to speak, who sit down on a day-to-day basis and decide policy, which will inform the actions and the programs of various ministries, and then the judiciary. And these are very specifically identified, and they're supposed to be exercised separately. Now, as I said, the day-to-day affairs of government are overseen by the cabinet. Parliament makes law, and the judiciary interprets and adjudicates on that law. So we know how the courts work. Now, if you think in terms of the executive, because remember, that's it's the parliament, the lawmakers, the executive, those who implement policy and manage day-to-day operations, and the courts or the judiciary. I just use the courts in a kind of generic vernacular kind of thing. The executive comprises policymakers, that's the cabinet members, and technocrats, the people who implement those policies. And in fact, as Becky Rollins says, is a real perversion of the process. And that is a reasonable position to take. And Pedro, you raised an important question. Public officers do not have immunity. I can get in the Senate when I was there, or a member of parliament can get in the House of Assembly. I remember last year, one member of parliament suggesting that I was a paid consultant to the leader of the opposition. This was soon after Conrad Thorne crossed the floor. And I had to say categorically, nobody pays me. And I made it a public announcement the day that I heard the night, because he crossed the floor. I was on a show that y'all know about, the Marseille Week show, and I pledged that I would assist where I can. But the person, so in other words, somebody can say something and essentially defame a person sitting in parliament or standing in parliament and speaking, but they cannot be taken before the law courts for that. A public officer does not have that immunity. Now, the question is, why and I suppose this is a question people would ask, why is it that the current government found it necessary not to bring public officers to sit in Parliament and be there to advise them, because they sit on the sidelines literally, and they are there to advise them? Why did they feel the need to do this? And I'll tell you what the difficulty I have with it, because I will use my own experience. Prior to going to Parliament, I would have sat in different places. Let's start with the ministry. I would have sat with staff members of the ministry and go through a whole set of issues, things that are important. They would have prepared a comprehensive brief for me, which would give me a lot of critical information, which I would utilize to speak to any issues that I had to speak to. In addition to preparing that brief, in a case, and they can be present anytime you're debating a piece of legislation of relevance to your ministry or the subject matter of the ministry. In addition to preparing that brief, if you cast your minds back to previous debates in Parliament, especially the estimates and the budget debates, you would see several officers being present. And the reason for their presence is that if a minister wants some clarification on something, he or she can say to the speaker, in the case of the House of Assembly, Mr. Speaker, this is a bit of information or a set of details I will need. I to bring it, getting it for you, or getting it to present to the honorable, my honorable colleagues or whatever. That officer can either, if they have access to the information right away, they could share it, or they can commit to getting it. And so, to me, it is almost as though you are passing a responsibility to public officers. And there's the other thing that is concerning is that a public servant, a public officer, is not supposed to have, quote unquote, to have a face, a public face. He or she, we know each other, is a small society, but I don't think it is fair for somebody. Let's say that I worked in the welfare department, and I was still working there, and I was a senior officer. Well, by now I would have retired given my age, but anyhow, if I were working there, I don't think it should, and there was an issue that was particularly contentious for the citizens, and I am the face of government presenting on that issue. Politicians get cussed. We know that, fairly and unfairly, whatever the case may be. But it is not fair for somebody to meet John Brown, PS, or director of XYZ in the supermarket, in a car park, and and assault them with words, not physical assault, but really address them in a way to take their anger out on that person. Because at the end of the day, the public officer is speaking to a policy that he or she is implementing, or part of the implementation process, but they are not the policy makers. They might advise, but the final decision is the cabinet. So that to my mind is problematic,
Is it a way of shielding ministers?
Huh?
Is it a way of shielding the ministers?
Yes, and that's a good way to describe it. You are shielding the minister, and it also is saying to me that the ministers are, in essence, not fulfilling their respective responsibilities. You're supposed to be on top of what's happening. And that's why you have a brief, so you can consult the document if you have to. And if you are on a day-to-day basis dealing with the issues in your ministry, you should have a good sense. Now, Lemuel Tell is saying hiding the minister and the responsibility. That is true. Now, these are ministers who have been given some additional support. And I use myself as an example. In the first 5 years as a minister, I had a personal assistant. In the second 5 years, because we were talking about trying to save funds and so on, and I know that efforts to save funds in relation to the cost of parliamentarians and the cabinet, people wanted to poo-poo that. But I, along with Darcy Boyce, I gave up because I was not an elected member. I gave up my personal assistant. And I was running a ministry with two parts, foreign affairs and foreign trade, and I was leader government business. And for most of the first 5 years, I led off every debate in Parliament, in the Senate. So my point is that your responsibility is to know what goes on. So when you bring the civil servant in the same way, I mean, if I apply the decision, then they could bring a judge and tell the judge, come and sit in the well of Parliament and explain what's happening in the courts. But no, the judiciary is independent, and I really think that it is hard to do that, and it really is the process really is unfair to the public servants. Their role is to, as I said, advise, to ensure that their ministers and the other members of Parliament, because they can request information, that they are properly briefed and that they understand. And where they do not understand or where they need more information, it can be given. But it is really a strange kind of thing that is happening. The other thing that I found interesting, and this, remember, I pointed out that the estimates process that because let me pause and say what the government has done is that they have turned the process around, and they have actually put in place, they've started with what you call the second reading speeches. Now, what I find interesting, because you have, and I look at this process because it is almost, why should I, as a member of cabinet who sat with my other cabinet colleagues, in this case, I think they're 20-something, and you in the House, you can exclude the few who are in the Senate, but you have sat with probably at least 20 of your colleagues in cabinet as members of Parliament. And well, I don't know what goes on in this cabinet, but I can tell you that in the cabinet in which I served, we would have discussed in detail matters that went to Parliament, matters that decisions and activities in various ministries. So we would have heard from our colleagues. And at the end of the day, when we make a decision, it is a collective decision. So in a sense, if you want to really get technical and not only technical, but if you really want to dissect what is taking place in Parliament, you have members of cabinet quizzing their colleagues about decisions about which they should know because they would have been discussed in Parliament. You may want some elaborations, but it really, when you listen, it is really a pat on the back kind of thing. I mean, now that we have, and previously when we had Reverend Joseph Atherley as an opposition leader, but certainly now, what we see demonstrated in the House of Assembly last year and this year is the kind of dissection, the kind of analysis, the kind of questions that need to happen. I know that some members of Parliament were not expecting to have this because I guess with a 30 love situation, what they probably thought was that, they could go into Parliament and congratulate each other and pat each other on the back and say what a good job you're doing. But really and truly, the opposition's job is to ask and get questions. Get questions on how money was spent, what monies are budgeted. Because if you actually look at the estimates document, and for people, this is what it looks like. I have several of these for 10 years. But if you look at the numbers, you would see that under a particular heading, and this one here, it says actual expenditure 2023-24, which would have been last year's financial year. This would have been from April 1st, 2023 to March 31st, 2024. The approved estimates for 2024-25, which is from April last year to March this year. And then they have revised estimates. So the approved estimates column speaks to what would have been approved in this exercise that's going on last year. And then they would have had revisions, because sometimes monies may not be enough or whatever, and they may move money around or they may reduce it. Because one of the things that happens, and I remember having to do this, is that you may have an approved estimates, but when you start to look at your revenues, you realize that government's revenues are not as great as you should. So, for example, if I can pull a number out here, and I will use one from the first head that we had, the Attorney General's Chambers, General Management and Coordination. What you would have seen, for example, was there was a figure for let me just pull one here, professional services, and the actual expenditure last financial year would have been $1,590,995. The approved estimates was $1,509,783. The revised estimates would have been a bit higher, would have been $1,571,358. And they put a similar figure in for this year as was expended they had last year. So really and truly, you can look and get a sense of how much money has been spent and where it is going. And particularly where there are usually some explanatory notes in here, particularly where they're not good explanations, or that otherwise that what is reflected there does not capture a good picture of what's happening on the ground or what you understand to be the situation. You can delve into that. So my concern really and truly is that what we have seen is a situation where public servants are being asked to do this. Another point I want to stress, and I recommend that people go and read the Constitution on that separation of powers that I mentioned, in terms of the separation of Parliament, the Cabinet, and the Executive and the Judiciary. The other thing to recognize is that the Constitution makes provision for the establishment of commissions, and for example, you have where the Police Service Commission, the Public Service Commission, and Judicial Services Commission, I think. In essence, these relate to how officers are recruited, employed, paid, and all of these. The point I made reference to that to say that a public officer is not an employee of Cabinet and is therefore not really answerable to Cabinet in that sense. Of course, they work with ministers in the ministry, and that's part of the structure. They're not employees of Cabinet, nor are they employees of Parliament. And under their, so that is another issue that people need to take into consideration. And so in essence, we look at this, and I would say on the important thing that I believe this administration is saying to Barbadians that they are saying to Barbadians, we want to be able to provide more details, let me put it, than traditionally has happened. I have absolutely no problem with that. My question or my comment, however, has to do with how you seek to achieve that. And you cannot achieve that properly or within the what I believe to be the expectations or the understanding of what the Constitution says, You cannot do that by bringing public servants into Parliament to speak on matters, because at the end of the day, it is not the according to the Constitution and all of these things, the way to do it. That level of explanation can be had, and I'm going to stop as soon as I make this point.
Maxine, can you hear me?
Oh, I'm hearing you now. Yes.
Oh, okay, because I was saying something, but I realized you couldn't hear me.
Okay, go ahead.
My question is, I'm wondering, are you coming back every week to give us an update on some of these protocols and procedures? We would love to help you.
Oh, you ask? Okay, well, in terms of say protocols and
because I
procedures.
saw in some of the comments, people were talking about this segment was really informative because even though you're watching the estimates in a day, you might not be familiar with all the protocols. And you know that unfortunately, we finish at 9. So
well, no, I can come back at another time. I don't even know what time it is. What time is it now?
It's 10 past.
That's okay.
But okay. You have people locked on. But I know that from
I can come back another time and continue. What would be useful is if some people can share some questions that they may want answered. But because I think, and I will pause because at the end of the day, what happens is that people don't quite understand. What is happening, what should happen, and so I am quite willing to do that, so I wasn't checking for the times. In fact, I don't have on the watch. I don't wear watch.
And I gotta call your auntie Maxine. I can call your auntie Maxine.
You can call me that because I know.
Well, you know the history, of course. So, question to you: You've been watching the debates. Oh, is our political leader?
Listen, hold on. Don't call me so. They call other people auntie. So I am just.
No. You're the best. You're the better by far. I was gonna mention that. I was saying no, but you're the better by far. Superior, untouched. So
I'm auntie because his mother was one of my player pals as a child growing up. Go ahead.
There we go. And somebody say you got enough facts. But viewers love you. So the question is. How is our political leader, the Honorable Ralph Tarr? How is he doing in regards to the debate?
In my mind,
so far,
he has done very well. I take the time to follow the debates now. I certainly, because at the end of the day, it takes a tough person to take on 28 other people because it is a speaker and then the other 28 members of Parliament.
But sometimes
they're not always all. If I'm they're not often very much there. I follow Parliament because I comment on the issues and therefore in the same way that I follow the call-in programs and so on, I follow. And I will tell you that the level that I described it this way recently. As I was speaking about on the anniversary of his crossing, the level of debate has risen because of the way he and the issues he puts on the table, and the level of attendance has risen as well. Because sometimes you looked around the house and there were so few. And I know ministers have their responsibilities, but the passing of legislation, the debating of legislation is at the heart of government and governance, because it is you need to have a legislative and a legal framework within to which to act. And that is why we have legislation passed, and that is why we have debates. And what we need to have with those debates is an understanding of the issues at the level of John and Jane citizen. So if people don't understand the substance of the debate, if they don't understand the processes, then, a lot of things people can get away with a lot of things. But I didn't realize that the time had reached there, but I really, I am, as you were saying, Shaquani, and I didn't hear you initially. I would be willing to come back and talk some more about the operations of government, and certainly we can continue to look at the estimates because there's some issues in there, and I perhaps by saying this may give you something to think about. If you look at all the monies spent by government are not captured in this estimates, because this talks about the financing of central government, the monies that go through the consolidated fund. Next time I will explain that. So Shaquani, remind me what I just said, if I could always listen back. Explaining what the consolidation fund is, explaining why you will not see certain statutory bodies appearing in here in terms of financing, and that can lead us to ask a number of questions in the interest of transparency and good governance and good government and accountability. So we can continue this discussion at another time.
Also the use of supplementaries too.
Okay, and yes, the use of supplementaries and how that, when they happen, why they happen, if they should happen, and how, whatever the case may be. And the process and the supplementaries, for those who are wondering, is just a way of allocating additional funds at some point in the financial year where monies may not be enough, or issues come up and so on.
Well, I know you're going to be here again, Auntie Maxine. I know you're going to be here again, and I just want to thank you for your contribution. Furthermore, I want to thank both candidates for their contributions. Yes, sorry. Final words from the ladies first. Go ahead.
Guys, I want to remind you again, continue to watch DLP TV as we will be bringing honest voices for the people, and we look forward to seeing you next week.
And for me, I just want to say thank you for watching DLP TV. The DLP has a story to tell, and we'll continue to tell that story until we can't tell it anymore.
The only place to be. DLP every Tuesday. DLP TV. One united DLP. Good night to all.
Good night.
Good night.